today's episode of M&A Empowerment. And my guest today is someone I just recently met out at DealMax. This is Allison Hartso. She's a fractional operating partner. Allison, welcome. If you could just take a second to introduce yourself and then let everyone know what your role is in the M&A process.
Yeah, Kelsey, thank you so much for having me on the show. It was delightful to meet you. I do work as a fractional operating partner with a focus on customer equity. You can think about that in the M&A process as almost like a quality of customer analysis. I use AI data and analytics to grow company value. I've done that for 33 of the Fortune 500, plus a wide range of PE-backed B2B and D2C companies. So in most cases, firms are not very precise in how they look at customer value, and that means they miss big opportunities to grow it.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely seems like an area where companies would definitely want to put some focus. So to help give our audience a little bit more context, could you describe a recent professional success of yours?
Yeah, I'd love to. So not long ago, I was hired by the senior executives at a PE-backed company to sort out a board matter for their commercial team. And what they had was a small number of very powerful customers that were holding up the company. And they were having this huge internal debate about who the next most powerful customer would be, because they had almost like a bluebird, a single point of failure here, a lot of revenue coming through a small group of customers. And because of this consternation, they would retool their production lines in order to offer different levels of service so that a customer that they thought was promising would get priority over one that wasn't. And so this was creating just a lot of havoc and a lot of inefficiency. So when I ran the data, I could see that they had customers that were classified incorrectly. It turned out they had around 3,000 customers. And when I ran the data, I could pinpoint 19% of those customers that were going to deliver 97% of the future revenue. And within that group, there were another 225 customers that were going to deliver 93% of the future margin. So those were the customers that needed to have the service level agreement. And that's just one example of how you take a strategic question and turn it into tactical marketing leverage using customer equity, quality of customer analysis. I do have a second story if we have time.
Yeah, I would love to hear it.
Okay, great. So that first one was more working with the management team, in the operating partner type role. But I also work for private equity companies as well. And in this case, I was hired by a smaller PE company to run customer due diligence. And what they did was a little tricky. They gave me blinded data. And they said, "Hey, Allison, what can you see in this data?" And I said, "Well, I can see a lot." So out of the transactional data they provided, I was able to see that this young company didn't really follow the typical profile of a young company. So companies, when they're newer, they tend to be geographically dense or centered around certain areas. And they tend to discount. Sometimes they discount to death. In other words, they get that first customer in on, a 25% off coupon or whatever it is. And then the second sale ends up being another type of discount. That's what I call discounting to death. In this case, the company had really wide geographic disbursement, which was weird. And they had what looked like word of mouth contagion. So in the same way that you might have an outbreak of something contagious, you get one spot and then you have a whole bunch of other spots form around it. In this case, the company had a lot of word of mouth. And that was a good thing because it turned out that the company was building this magnificent wave of loyalty that was ripe to play out, but was not yet present on its books. So they were already accruing in the first 12 months an additional $6 million of value that wasn't you couldn't see unless you were modeling it correctly. And because that is a process, an accretive process year over year, there was a much larger number that was hidden from the investors. So it turned out that it was a very sharp investment, huge customer love, and a great investment overall.
Wow. Yeah, definitely a different kind of story than your first one, but so relevant, I mean, for our audience here, especially in the PE world. So, yeah, great stories.
Thank you.
So lastly, what would you say to other women who are currently in the space or maybe looking to get into it, kind of exploring some ideas? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I've had a lot of experience in this space. I've noticed that the finance culture and the tech culture tend to be remarkably similar. So, one solution is my friend Telly Whitney has a book coming out. It's called Rebooting Tech Culture. And she talks about solutions in the tech space. Really powerful book. I think everyone should read it. Or, if you don't read her book, you can certainly read mine, Age of Customer Equity. But a bigger, perhaps a bigger or more useful general tip might be to hire help. I have found this to be incredibly valuable, and most of the women that I coach who are younger tend to want to do it all themselves. So maybe they're young moms and they're trying to balance 3 or 4 different things, but you need to carve out that time to recharge yourself so that you can continually bring your best, as opposed to just clicking the mouse and you're exhausted. So my first tip is buy Telly's book, and my second tip is hire help, take time for yourself.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can relate to it as well, but I mean, I know kind of earlier in my career, I almost always felt like I just always had to say yes, always had to say yes, and you kind of just wear yourself down. So I definitely echo that sentiment.
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard to know. Like you feel like, oh, I can do it all, and I mean, yeah, you can, but at what cost?
Right, right, exactly. No, that's great advice. So again, thank you for joining us. Again, this is Allison Hartso. She's a fractional operating partner, and it was great to have you today.
Thank you, Kelsey.